first period. Always forget to get everything squared away. Okay, so today we are going to be doing like a little practice DBQ essay. This is the same sample essay that we looked at yesterday. While we are not actually going to write this thing, you are going to take the steps that pretty much you're going to take with any DBQ essay. And the thing is, once you master the steps, the DBQ is not that bad. Like I've said before, it's really the only writing we do that you can go into it and not know a whole lot about the topic, but still bang out a pretty good essay. Again, all the evidence, all the knowledge you really need for the most part is in the documents themselves. The setup takes a while. It is something you do have to spend some time on, kind of getting your essay all squared away. But once you do that, if you spend the time that's really required setting this thing up, the essay, I swear, is not that bad. Before we get started, a couple news and notes. I have decided, since we do still have some people struggling and some people are still kind of straggling behind, turning in work and stuff like that, originally today at 4:30 was going to be the last time I would accept work. I'm extending that to tomorrow at 4:30. So you essentially get one extra day. If there's something you're missing that I'm still willing to accept, and that goes from notebook check number 1 all the way to what we've been doing here recently, I will still accept that those links are open. Guys, if you're missing something, if you want to improve your grade, that's something you really got to take responsibility and got to get done. Because tomorrow, 4:30, it is all being cut off. The thing that we're doing today, all these steps, you're not copying all this or anything like that. But let's go ahead and crack open your notebook. And I do want you to write at the top of the page, 2017 Practice DBQ. Because there is some stuff that I am going to have you write, which as I go through the steps, I think that's going to be pretty straightforward. Again, this is for an upcoming notebook check that's still quite a ways off, but it is something certainly that you're going to want to have access to. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's look at the DBQ. Like I said, this was an actual writing prompt that my kids did back in 2017. The rubric was a little bit different back then, but this is still the same style of DBQ that you're going to see. So essentially, you've got this writing prompt. Evaluate the extent to which religious responses to wealth accumulation in Eurasia in the period circa 600 BCE to 1500 CE differed from state responses to wealth accumulation. So step 1, you got to really break down that prompt. You got to look at it. You got to take a deep breath. You got to look at it again. I know we talked about this yesterday, but guys, a lot of these prompts, at first glance, you're going to be like, oh my God, what is this crap? I can't believe this. What is that? What does that even say? Because if you are taking the AP test, the DBQ comes at the very end. Your big essays come at the end. Basically, you'll start off, you'll do your 55 multiple choice questions, 55 minutes, that's a deep end. Then without a break, they're like, all right, now we're going to do the SAQs. You got to do 3 sets of SAQ questions. After that, you get a little 10-minute break. Go use the bathroom, get some fresh air. And when you come back, they're going to give you your LEQ essay prompts and the DBQ essay prompt all at the same time. And then I forget the exact time, but you kind of decide what order you go in, you budget your time effectively. They usually say, though, spend about an hour on the DBQ because it does take a while to set up, and then you're going to spend 40 minutes on the LEQ. Moral of the story is this is going to be one of the last things that you get to. You're going to be tired. You're going to be worn out. And they're counting on that. Again, in my mind, the College Board's kind of evil. They like to trick you. They like to manipulate you. They like to scare you. But the writing prompts are almost always fairly easy when you break them down. So a couple things. And if you have this on paper, I'd have you do this, but let's just walk through the process, because eventually you will have them on paper. First thing, let's identify the skill. This is a comparison essay. You're comparing how states and religions responded to people getting more wealth. As you know, we talked about this yesterday, but this time period, lots of trade going on. Silk Road trade, Indian Ocean trade. Those are going to be the 2 that affect this particular geographic area. Okay, so it is a comparison essay. The next thing I do after I identify the skill, I look at the years. Now this is way broader than you will see nowadays. This is when we were still doing the old curriculum that went back like to the Neolithic Revolution on. We spent a lot of time on that stuff. In the new curriculum, it's really mainly as far as what you test on, just 1200 to today. But in the old curriculum, it was like everything in history. So when you see these for real, that's going to be more condensed, which will make it easier, because then you can kind of think, oh, that time period, what do I know? But I always like to see the years. Then I always like to see where in the world I'm talking about. Eurasia. So we're not talking about Africa, we're not talking about Australia, we don't really do much Australia in this class. We're not talking about the Americas, we're just talking about Europe and Asia. Now the reason I kind of do this is it helps me get my mind right. What do I know about this time period? What do I know about these geographic areas? Okay, you start thinking, who was around during this time period? Oh my God, and during this time period, it's pretty vast, so there's a lot of people around. But at least confining it to the time period and confining it to a specific geographic area, that does help. Then I look at the whole question. It's all about wealth accumulation. During these years, you know, religion, obviously very powerful. New people are getting new sources of wealth, they're getting rich. How did religions respond to that? On the flip side, how did states respond? A state is just a country or an empire, it's a government. So that's the prompt, that's all it is. There's a lot of people getting rich during this time period. How did religions typically respond? How did states typically respond? So now you know what you're writing about. Now you know the question you're trying to answer. But really at this point, you're like, oh my God, I have no idea. I don't know how states responded. I don't know how religions responded. How am I going to get this information? That's where the documents come in. You're going to read through the documents and you're going to see the sort of responses that are present in these documents. And you're going to base your thesis statement, you're going to base your answer on what the documents give you. And that's why this essay, once you get it down, is pretty easy. The information's there. You got to read through it, you got to think about it. And then at the end of the day, once you kind of see how states responded, how religions responded, how those responses were markedly different, well, then the rest of your essay, are just breaking down those documents and proving that your thesis was correct. But again, your thesis comes from the documents anyway, so it's not that bad. So now that we know what we're writing about, here's the next step. We got to read the documents. And this is where I've got something I want you to do in your notebook. So on that same page, that hopefully in your notebook, you already labeled 2017 Practice DBQ, I want you to number your paper 1 through 7. 1 through 7, probably skip a couple lines in between. You have 7 documents that your essay is going to be based on. Now, if you remember in the rubric, there's some ways to cheat the system. If when we do this for real, you're like, oh my God, 7's too much, we'll read through them all and maybe write an essay on just 3 of the documents. You can still get most of your points with just 3 documents. Or if 7's too much, but 3, you can go more than that. If you can write your essay on 6 documents, you can still get full credit. There's always one document that you can leave out if you so choose. But if you can, try to write it about all 7. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to time you, and this will kind of correspond to about how much time the College Board recommends you spend doing this anyway. Over the next 10 minutes, here's what I'd like you to do. And you're going to have to take some notes on each of these documents, but it's not a whole lot. First thing I want you to do is review the source. Review the source of the document. The source is always going to be at the very top. Like here, you've got the Chronicle of Zhao. Here, you've got, if you keep going, down to the second document, you've got Chinyaka. I completely screwed that up. Chinaka, Chanaka, I have no idea. Advisor to the first more renowned. Here you got Marcus Tullius Cicero, a Roman statesman and philosopher, an essay about duties. As you read each document, that is always the first place to start. Here's why. A, it gives you some ideas about the historical time period, the context it's coming out of. We'll talk about capping the documents a little bit later. I'm not super concerned about that just yet, but there's a lot of directions you could go. But also looking at the source, a lot of times you can determine right away, is this a state response or is this a religious response? Because that's what your essay is about. How did states respond? How did religions respond to people getting all this money? So as you read, review the source, carefully read the document. For each document where you numbered, I want you to label them either state or religion. Now, sometimes you'll know right off the bat, like this one, like document 2, he's an advisor to the first Mauryan emperor. So is that a state response or a religious response? It's a state, he works for the government, okay? Other times, it's gonna be really clear. Like this one comes from a Christian monk. State response or religious response? Very good. Okay, sometimes it's less clear. Sometimes you do have to read the whole document to determine if it's state or religion. But still, do that for each document. After you've read the document and you've determined if it's a state or a religious response, and you're going to put that, next to your numbers, I want a very, very brief summary. It could be 2 or 3 words. This has to make sense to you more than anybody. But I want you to summarize how that state or how that religion responded to this issue, to wealth accumulation. So that's all you got to do over the next 10 minutes. Read the documents, read them completely, determine if it is a state response or a religious response, and then very briefly, just in a few words, how did that state, how did that religion respond? What are they wanting people to do with their wealth? What are they requiring people to do with their wealth? So 10 minutes. Then we need to be able to discuss this as a group. Does everybody understand the game plan? All right. 10 minutes. I'm going to put the timer on my phone just so I can be completely legit. 10 minutes now. Read the documents, label them state or religion. Some of them you may have to read more than once because, again, these are old documents. And then just briefly, few words, tell me how that state responded, how that religion responded to wealth accumulation. Online kids, I'm gonna try something. I'm gonna not share my screen for a minute. You keep doing what you're doing. Just give me a second. I think this is gonna work. Or I should say, I hope this is gonna work. Let me see. We're going to be doing some stuff on the board here in a second, so hopefully you can see it. If not, just pay attention. You'll still get a lot out of it. How you doing, sir?
How's it going?
All right. We still got about 7 minutes and 45 seconds. Don't be intimidated. Yes, I do. kind of what I do.
That's number.
Yeah, I've got it on desk numbers. And then I've got a little map I do on the first period to correspond with. And then 186. I'll make she's GD. And then 186, this is number 11. So that's going to be right there. So, yeah, identify all the kids in the vicinity.
Yeah, we have that thing that's on.
Think like this little square.
It's from 7 to,
That's the only way right here.
uh-huh,
And then upwards.
up here, and here, and here.
Let me give you a list here. Still hardcore detective work, man.
I can just write the seat number down and look, no
Okay.
difference to it.
Okay, cool.
It's not taking your time away.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Weird.
I do have a first one.
Don't ignore those sources, or even like under the painting, don't ignore the little notes, because everything is going to be valuable here.
Not every seat is filled.
What's that?
Not every seat is filled.
No. The ones that aren't numbered, those are usually remote kids.
Okay.
Remote kids are kids that never, ever show out.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we just need you to label the state response or religious response, and then the briefest of summaries. 2, 3 words. How'd the state respond here? How'd the religion respond? We got about 4 minutes. If we need a little bit more time, that's okay. Let's see how far you get next one. Thank you so much, sir.
All right.
Need anything else, let me know.
Okay.
At this point, we got about 1 minute left. That's all good. This is just practice. Do you guys think you'll be done in 1 minute? Yes, no, maybe so. Would you feel better if we just said 5 more minutes? Okay, 5 more minutes. We gotta start talking about this in 5, and I do need you guys to participate in some discussion because trust me, it's all gonna make more sense if we start seeing a lot of the same things. So I'm gonna restart it. We got 5 minutes left. Let's try to get this done in the next 5. If you finish early, just kind of look back over some of your stuff and, be prepared to discuss it. and come to a stopping point. I think that hopefully you got to get through most of this. So this is the process. You break down the prompt, you read through the documents, you jot down a few notes. Now we got to figure out a way to use these documents to actually answer the writing prompt. What were some different ways that states responded to wealth accumulation, that religions responded to wealth accumulation? So let's talk about this as a group. Everybody take a look at document 1. Let's go to document 1 here. The Chronicle of Zhou, one of the earliest Chinese historical works composed during the Warring States period, circa 350 BC. Raise your hand if you think this is a religious response. Raise your hand if you think this is a state response. Just want to make sure you were listening. Yeah, this is a state response. How'd you guys know it was a state response, not a religious response? Y'all can just say it.
Chinese state. Yeah, that's it. Chinese state. Oh, wow.
They're talking about this Liu administration. They're talking about an ambassador. They never talk about religions at all, okay? So we're going to label this state. So can anybody tell me how the government's responding here? I mean, what's going on in this particular document? This is one of the harder ones. The other ones are a little bit easier.
They desire daydream.
Okay, say it again.
They desire daydream.
Okay, somebody desired a jade ring. Essentially, you've got this Chinese state of Liu, and we'll explain why you got all these different Chinese states. An ambassador shows up to the state of Liu, and he's talking to another official there. He's saying, hey, man, on the way in, I saw this merchant. He had an awesome ring. Why don't you get it for me? What does the guy from Liu say? Right here.
They make like the ruler and the merchants, like what they made pact.
And what was the pact?
I forgot.
It's all right. Let's look right here. Our rulers and the merchants who live in our territory have preserved their mutual relations down to the present day. If you get the jade and lose friendly state, wouldn't that be a mistake? And the ambassador's like, yeah, you're right. Basically, the Liu, the government here, is saying, we're not going to just rob the merchants just to impress you. We made a pact. We're going to cooperate with them. We're going to leave them alone. If they follow the laws, if they maintain loyalty to us, then we're going to leave them be. So would it be fair to say that the state response to this accumulation of wealth is like mutual respect, cooperation, basically leave them alone? Okay, is that pretty close to what you guys wrote? All right, well, let's put it here. Let's put, leave them alone. I like that. Trust me, it's going to make sense here in a second. Let's go ahead and go down to number 2. Number 2 is a little bit more straightforward. Okay, so I said this earlier. This one, you can tell if it's state or if it's a religion just by looking at the source. Shinyakya, I think I almost got it right. Advisor to the first Mauryan emperor. This is an economic and political treatise, which means it's kind of setting forth a policy. So is this state or religion?
State.
State. I mean, you got it written by a government official. So somebody tell me, how does the state respond to all this wealth accumulation? We know trade's increasing, merchants, theoretically could be getting wealthier. What are they saying they're going to do?
Make a superintendent.
They say it louder?
Superintendent needs to monitor it.
Yeah, they're going to monitor. They're going to regulate. I mean, look here. We're going to monitor demand and changing prices. We're going to determine the time suitable for distribution, so when they can sell stuff, what they can buy, how much prices they can charge. It says he shall avoid setting prices that allow for such a large profits for merchants as to harm the people. So they're actually regulating trade in the economy to the level to where merchants can't get too rich. And then they go on with this. Merchants got to submit a sales report. They've got to make sure their weights and measures, all these spices and stuff. They're going to measure it out. Heck, the government's even going to fix the prices. So like Miss Kinsey said, they're going to monitor it. They're going to regulate it. Okay, is that pretty close to what you guys saw? They're going to regulate the economy. Okay, trade's increasing. They don't want the merchants getting filthy rich. So they're going to regulate. So here, it's just regulation. That's their response. Okay, let's move on to document 3. Now this one, I think, is the one that for me is the weirdest one, but it's also pretty simple. Okay, Marcus Tullius Cicero, Roman statesman. State response or religious response? Let's say. Saying about merchants specifically. Look at it. And he starts here talking about, how some occupations are pretty cool, others are kind of scummy. He talks about, occupations that are condemned, like tax collecting and money lending. He also talks about merchants, how it's vulgar, how they just buy stuff and jack up the prices. That's not a good, noble way to earn your coin. What does he say a noble way to earn your wealth is? It's right at the end. Kind of start right there. Yeah, agriculture, landowning. So here you got to think, okay? This guy's a Roman statesman. He's probably a rich guy. Probably owns a lot of land. He probably inherited a lot. So of course he's going to paint it in a way that all these new people getting rich, they're scumbags. They're doing all this shady stuff. But us, us older, people that come from older money, we're more respectful. So here, this new wealth accumulation is kind of criticizing these people, right? And again, just because I'm saying it doesn't mean it's the only way to interpret it. All these documents, you have multiple ways to interpret it. But I think this is something that makes pretty good sense. Criticize. All right, let's move on to document 4. We gotta get through all these. Document 4. Geronatus, a Christian monk. He's writing the life of Melania the Younger, who is a saint. It's a biography of a saint. 450 CE. Stated religious. Religious. He's talking about old Melania and how she had all this money and how she had this awesome estate. What'd she do with all that money? Come on, look at the end. It says she's out in the country, she's living it up, things are pretty cool, she's got this awesome property, she got all sorts of people living there, she has hundreds of slaves. Crazy. Well, what does she do? I mean, this stuff wouldn't make her a saint.
Did she give them all to God or
She gave it all away. She gave it all away to God, but it's hard to hand God some money. So who are you giving it to? Yeah. So this Christian monk is talking about how awesome Melania was, because even though she had all this wealth, she saw the true way: give your money to the church. So we could say donation. That's what the religious response here is, right? They're not trying to regulate. They're not trying to criticize. They want that money themselves. They say you should donate it to us. Let's move on to number 5. Hopefully you're seeing some themes here. We have here the Quran. Religious or state? It is religious. In the Quran, what are they saying people need to do with their money? Say it again?
Give it to the poor.
Give it to the poor. Again, it's not the exact same place it's going, but another religion saying you need to donate. You need to donate it to charity. You need to not be greedy. So we've got our religious. And again, just for simplicity's sake, we can say donate because that's what they're talking about. Now this next one you got to think about, but it ain't that bad. Painting from a Buddhist cave temple in whatever that is, Central Asia. The painting shows the Buddha and bodhisattvas, which are other Buddhist holy figures, blessing Central Asian traders bearing gifts for their temples. So, is this holy? Is this religious? Or is it a state response?
Religious.
Okay, now it's hard for a painting, but think about it. What's the painting depicting again? Okay, say it again.
Blessing traders.
Yeah, they're blessing traders. Why are they blessing them? Because they gave him stuff. Sounds an awful lot like they want donations, doesn't it? And then our final one. Your very last one here, document 7. This is coming from the ruler of the South Indian Kakatiya state. Well, oh my God, that's pretty obvious. What is it? It's the state response. What's he saying? Now this one, there's a word in there. If you know what this word means, it's pretty obvious. If you don't, Anybody ever heard the word duty other than like, hey, it's your duty to go do this? Anybody know what a duty is? And it's implied. Because all a duty is a tax. That's all it is. And he's saying, hey, back in the day, the people that used to rule here, they robbed these sea traders blind. We're not going to do that. We're going to leave you guys alone. We're going to protect you. But you have to pay a fixed duty to those who have incurred great risk of sea voyage, blah, blah, blah. The rate of this duty is 1/30 of all exports and imports. So these traders, they've got to pay it. So their response is taxation. So we got a bunch of different responses here, correct? Could we say the religious responses, though, are pretty much all the same? So if the question is evaluate the extent to which religious responses to wealth accumulation in Eurasia in the period 600 BC to 1500 CE differed from state responses, could we say something to the extent of, well, religions typically advocated for donation, whereas states, mainly advocated for taxation, regulation, or criticism, or they just left them alone? I mean, that's kind of wordy, but could you say that? There's your thesis statement right there. That's it. That's all it is. And let's say you didn't want to use the weird criticize one, because that does kind of stand out. Remember, you only got to use 6 documents. So maybe we X that one out, and maybe we do a thesis like this. In Eurasia from 600 BCE to 1500 CE, and this is kind of reusing the prompt, which is okay, but you can't just restate the prompt. You need to add some new stuff. So in Eurasia from 600 BCE to 1500 CE, states and religious institutions responded to increased accumulation of wealth differently, while states responded by, let's say, encouraging taxation, regulation, or letting them be. I don't know if I can write that small. Religious institutions typically encourage donation. You didn't know the answer when you started this. You didn't know the answer when you saw the prompt, but you get your answer from what the documents are giving you. And that's all the DBQ is. And now that you've got this, guess what? You've got your thesis, you've got a sense of direction. The rest of the essay kind of writes itself. Okay, obviously you're gonna have to start off with context before this. But maybe in the first couple body paragraphs, you're just summarizing the state responses. You're summarizing those documents, and you're doing it in such a way that ties back to your thesis. And then maybe the next few paragraphs, you're summarizing the religious responses. Each document, hey, in document 1, the Buddhists are saying, give us stuff, so we can bless you. In document 2, they're saying whatever that said. I don't really remember. Guys, that's all the DBQ is. You're going through the documents, you're figuring out what they're saying, you're writing a thesis, and then you're explaining the documents for the rest of the essay. Now, at some point, you want to try to fit in some outside evidence. Maybe you can find a nice way of talking about Silk Road trade or something in Or maybe you could talk about some of the beliefs of Buddhism or Islam. You know, you could get into the fact that almsgiving is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. That's outside evidence. At some point, you're going to want to cap a few of the documents, which we're not going to worry about that so much right now. But let me show you how easy it is, because it's all, I'm not going to say it's all made up crap, but it's you drawing conclusions. So let's go, because I did a few of these a minute ago, just kind of off the top of my head. Let's go to let's go to document 1. Okay, I'm going to show you how you can apply this whole cap process to these documents. And again, it's not wrong. Maybe it's not right, who knows? But it shows me and it shows the readers that you thought about the document and you drew some conclusions. So in this first one, we're going to do context. Remember, that's background information. And you may or may not know this, but China's had a lot of warring states period. We talked about it before. That's time periods, it's kind of like in between dynasties, where a bunch of different families are fighting for control. Here, you've got one Chinese state, you've got the ambassador from one Chinese state going to another Chinese state, the Lu. And the Lu's talking about how awesome they are. No, we're not going to rob the merchants, we're cool with them. Well, you could draw some conclusions to that. And here's what I put. Doc 1 is set in one of China's many warring states periods, meaning no one unified dynasty ruled in China. That's the context. But you've always got to add a little bit more of how that affects what's being said. The Lu official likely wanted to maintain good relationships with merchants to further legitimize their fair reputation and their right to rule. Do I know that's true? No, I don't. But I thought about it. I thought about how these factors might affect what's being said. We'll do another one. Let's go to document 3. And I kind of alluded to this earlier, but and guys, some of this does rely on you knowing a little bit about history, but other stuff you can just draw conclusions and go off the rails. So this one we're doing point of view. And this guy's a Roman statesman, he's a rich guy, he's in the government. We get that. Document 3 comes from the point of view of a Roman politician and likely an aristocrat, a nobleman. Do I know that for sure? Not really, but probably. Based on his tone, I'll say that's probably true. As he likely was a wealthy landowner himself, he may have been resentful of the new wealth of merchants, so his writings are critical. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But I looked at these factors and I drew some conclusions. Do one more, and this is the painting. And this one, it pretty much tells you, but just spelling it out, man, it works. So we got the painting, they're giving gifts to these various traders, and they're getting memorialized. Kind of cool to be in a painting. Why are they in the painting? Because they gave them stuff. So what I put, and this is for purpose, the painting was likely aimed at merchants, and this could also be audience, I guess. The painting was likely aimed at merchants who traded on the Silk Road. Traders that gave gifts to Buddhist monasteries are honored in the painting, and the artist likely did this to encourage other merchants to do so as well. Maybe that's the purpose, maybe that's the audience. I don't know, but I thought about it and it kind of makes sense. As you've seen, it takes a little bit to set these up, and you do need to think outside the box. Well, once you get this down, guys, this is one of the easiest essays to write. Because if you can just understand the documents, I'm telling you, the essay kind of writes itself. Tomorrow, we're not going to be doing a whole lot. There's a video I need to show you from the counselors. It's about 8 minutes long. It's going to talk about course selection for next year. On Monday, we are going to do some DBQ prep stuff, but it's going to be kind of an independent assignment. That way, when the counselors call you, and they are going to call you on your computer on Teams, you'll be able to stop what you're doing and talk to your counselor and get things squared away. Then on Tuesday, we're going to come back together. We're going to look at what you did on Monday. We're going to talk about it, kind of point you in the right direction. And then Wednesday, we're actually going to write this thing. But I think especially after today, and especially Monday and Tuesday, you're going to get a lot of the prep work for your essay done then. The essay itself shouldn't be that bad. This is designed to be a very easy, well, fairly easy essay that everybody can excel at and hopefully have a solid test grade to start the 6 weeks out on. Now, if that comes to pass, it's kind of up to you. But make sure you're here, make sure you pay attention, make sure you do what you need to do. Any questions about this? I know it's weird, and some of you guys are like, oh my God, this is terrible. Others, it's probably starting to click and you're seeing that this could be easy once you get it down. It takes a little bit. This is one of the things that a lot of people dread, but there's no reason to dread it. You just really got to take the time setting these things up. Other than that, y'all just chill. We got a couple minutes left. See you guys later.